Migi and Dali, the weirdest identical twins to walk planet Earth, managed to be adopted by an elderly couple. This couple adopts only one son, Hitori, but the two teenagers deceive not only the couple, but everyone around them that they are one person, Hitori. The anime follows their investigation of their mother's death. In December 1989, a childless elderly couple visits an orphanage to adopt a child. The children show them too much love, literally. The couple doesn't know who to pick, so they decide to go and come back another day. As they leave the orphanage, a sudden wind blows, lifting the woman's beret, and it's caught by a very handsome boy. The woman immediately falls in love and tells the boy to keep the beret for her, saying she'll come for it the next day. Just as they're about to leave, they contemplate if they should take the boy, and it suddenly starts raining. The couple solidifies their resolve to pick the boy when they see him shielding a puppy from the rain with an umbrella. No idea who these couple think they're deceiving, but that was apparently the sign they needed to do what they already planned to do: adopt this beautiful boy. The boy, whose name we find out to be Hitori, finally comes to the house of his newly adopted parents, and they show him to his room. They are about decorating his room when the man notices a big box he doesn't seem to recognize. Suddenly, Hitori tells them he'd like to continue the decorations by himself. The man and his wife step out of the room to make dinner, and Hitori cuts open the box for us to see another Hitori. So now there are two Hitoris. I knew I should have stopped drinking. He tells the second Hitori they should tidy the room, and they do it at an amazing speed. I'll definitely need me a couple of Hitoris for my chores. The husband knocks on the door and tells Hitori to head downstairs for dinner. Hitori eats at the dining table while the second Hitori hides behind some flowers. They talk about getting him more clothes, and Hitori says he'd like to wear the type of cloth he's putting on every day. The woman makes a joke about him being Steve Jobs. While they were discussing, Hitori signals the second Hitori to come under the dining table. He then tells his mom he needs some more food and proceeds to do an amazing switch with the second Hitori. I don't know how physics works in this world, but this move is something out of a sci-fi gymnasium. The second Hitori is now on the dining table and proceeds to eat his own meal. The reason I call them Hitori and second Hitori is that these boys are too identical. Even I don't know who's Migi and who's Dali. The father wants a massage, and Migi and Dali work together to give him the ultimate spa session with 4 hands that make it seem like 2. Migi and Dali are seen having a meeting in their room in the middle of the night, talking about how the day was a success. They also scribble something on a paper that seems to be a map. It's morning, and the whole family is at the dining table. Yes, the whole family. The dad, mom, Hitori number 1, Hitori number 2. Although Hitori number 2 is eating from under the table. After breakfast, the couple talks about Hitori still not opening up completely to them and the things they would like to do with him, but they don't know that Hitori was eavesdropping. The woman talks about how she wants to bake a cherry pie with Hitori, and the man talks about how he wants to carry Hitori on his shoulders, and they both laugh at each other, realizing how ridiculous they both sound. Migi and Dali come up with a dangerous plan, and the next day, Hitori goes to sit beside his mom to read and plants the idea that they should bake a pie. Excitement wants to split this woman in half, and she hurriedly makes preparations for them to bake the pie. Once again, Migi and Dali work together with 4 hands that seem like 2 to make the pie a success, although the woman loses her cool at one point. The astonishing thing is that, even up to this point, no one has suspected or caught them. The man sees how happy his wife and Hitori seem to be and gets a little jealous. The second Hitori, who was under the table, caught a glimpse of this jealousy and starts working on another diabolical plan in his mind. That same day, Hitori goes outside the house and pretends as if he's struggling to put a birdhouse on the tree branch. The man passes, and this catches his attention. He asks Hitori what's happening, and Hitori tells him he's trying to put this bird nest on the branch, but he's too short. He manages to emotionally draw the man into asking Hitori to ride his shoulder. Hitori agrees and climbs onto the shoulder, and as soon as the man tries to lift him, he cracks his back. This man is lucky I'm not his wife, because I'd have laughed him to oblivion. Somehow this poses a problem for Migi and Dali. During their midnight meeting, they talk about not being able to progress with the plan if the weak old man can't lift them on his shoulders. Honestly, sometimes I don't get half of what they're saying, so they make a new plan, and the next day they work together to make this man's dream come true by suspending themselves in the air when he lifts Hitori on his shoulder. The man is happy now, thinking he's Hercules, and it brings him to tears. Migi and Dali have another midnight meeting. I'm beginning to think this is a 2-man cult. They talk about everything they've learned since they stepped into the house. They mention that they can now make their body weight 0. The woman has a short temper, the man has a bad back, and most importantly, cherry pie is delicious.
What?
It's a new year, and the old couple seems to be discussing something diabolical while Hitori is in the bath. Meanwhile, we find out that Migi and Dali are actually illiterates and don't know anything. They use the floor brush to wash their bodies and ask weird questions like how many layers layers of skin a person grows per year. Needless to say, these two are even dumber than I thought. Just as they are showing us new levels of stupidity, the mom knocks at the door and walks in to meet only one Hitori. She leaves his towel and pajamas and heads out. Then we see Hitori number 2 emerge from the bath. It was a close call. They were almost caught. We see Migi wearing the pajamas and Dali rolling like he's having a seizure because he didn't get to wear pajamas. The woman later combs Hitori's hair and compliments it, but Hitori tells her that back at the orphanage, people said his hair was weird. Then she tells him that being weird isn't such a bad thing, especially since their dog is named Sardine. I'm not even going to go into that detail. At this point, we see that they actually have plans to investigate the village, and they decide it's time to go out for a bit. They make some slippery moves, and just as they're about to head out, the man and his wife knock on their door. They tell Hitori that they're going out, and he wanted to seize the opportunity to go out with them, but for the first time, they deny him. Migi and Dali get so suspicious and decide to investigate the house. Putting on some blue gloves with their black shirts and blue jeans, they resemble detectives from LAPD. They make their way straight to the room of the man and woman and start searching for anything that could mean these people are planning something evil. These guys keep unveiling more and more dumbness when they see a thong, and Dali calls it a triangle with strings. They make their way into the man's study and keep searching but seem to find nothing, until one of them sees a picture behind the picture on the man's desk. One look at the picture, and they switch moods from playful to serious in like 0.6 seconds. The picture is of a man carrying a lady. Apparently, the man in the picture is the younger version of their adopted father, but the woman doesn't resemble the woman at all, so they become very suspicious. They automatically assume that that was the man's lover. They make their way again to the last room in the house, and what they see blows their minds. They see human hair, or at least that's what they call it. Migi then says that the woman is always stroking his hair, and she wonders if it has anything to do with this. Just then, the couple returns, and Migi and Dali rush back to their room, but see that the couple aren't coming in but are going to the barn outside their house. They both climb down their window and go to find out what their adopted parents are up to. They eavesdrop and hear the parents talk about a welcome party and about them closing their eyes at 3 o'clock. They decide to get a closer look to gain more context as to what is happening. That's when they see a spinning machine and they go back to their rooms. I think these boys should have been born as girls because they like jumping to conclusions. They conclude that the man and his wife want to use that machine to shave off their hair and put it on that wall. Well, not both of them actually, just Hitori. And they decide they are going to punish the man and his wife for attempting to cut their hair. The day of the welcome party arrives, and the man and his wife are contemplating what to wear. Hitori tells them they should all wear black so that the family outfit will match. The guests start arriving, and the party starts with the man and woman introducing Hitori as their newly adopted son. Then a few people come to introduce themselves to Hitori, and this time around, it isn't Migi in the spotlight, but Dali instead, while Migi is seen above in the chandelier. I just have to ask, don't the people in this world have eyes? That's when a fellow named Akiyama comes to give Hitori a gift and proceeds to ask if Hitori likes birds. Hitori tells him he does, since part of his name means bird. Shortly after this, Migi, who was in the chandelier, releases some drops of hot sauce into the woman's drink. She screams and requests water, and Dali keeps giving her clear liquor. It isn't until she starts moving like Cardi B that we realize things have gone south. Migi and Dali have another plan. They apply olive oil to their father and mother and plan to use a magnifying lens to increase the rays from the sun, starting a fire and burning them in the process. Dali agrees to be the one to burn them, and Migi would be the one to be blindfolded. The time arrives, but Dali decides not to go along with the plan again. Migi is confused. Did the plan fail? Would they cut his hair? It's time to take off the blindfold, and Migi is very scared. He eventually removes it, and when he looks, he sees a bicycle. That explains the spinning machine he saw. He freezes, and the man and woman think maybe he doesn't like the gift. Dali then has to use the magnifying lens to burn him a bit so he will run around, and it works, but he runs like a dog on fire. Migi and Dali eventually understand that they were jumping to conclusions, and the woman in the picture is the same woman now, only that she was wearing a wig, which also explains the hair they saw in the other room. The two boys then decide it's time to pay their mom a visit. It so happens that the earliest memory of Migi and Dali is of them hiding under a bed in a room with their mom, and they remember the walls of the room having a water-flea wallpaper. One day, they left the house and went to Oregon Village, the village that their mom loved so much, the same village they are now adopted in. Unfortunately, their mother got murdered in that village, and these two small boys had to bear the loss and bury their own mother. She had a necklace that we always see on either's neck. The man, woman, and Hitori discuss while having breakfast. The woman encourages Hitori to join the Boy Scouts, and initially, he's not happy about it. Later, Migi and Dali discuss how to search the village room by room until they find the room with the water flea wallpaper. wallpaper. They then come up with the idea that since it's not reasonable to break into everyone's house, they should probably make some friends, prompting them to join the Boy Scouts. Hitori goes on a Boy Scout adventure with other young people his age and is determined to make friends. He does all he can, but it seems these guys aren't just feeling his vibes. Then he meets these guys who tell him they'll be his friends if he can walk a hanging line from beginning to end without using his hands. Desperately, Hitori agrees, and Migi and Dali start taking turns to walk the line without anyone knowing they are two different people. They fall down so many times and get back up. They're encouraged by Akiyama, who has always wanted to fly, and eventually they succeed. Those guys still refuse to be his friends, but at least Akiyama agrees to be his first friend. Hitori makes it so Akiyama invites him over that same day, and that's all he's wanted, so he can investigate the house properly. Migi and Dali go as Hitori to Akiyama's house, and they don't meet any parents at home because they're always at work. It's only Akiyama and his elder sister, and Akiyama says his sister is probably asleep. They head to Akiyama's rooms, and Dali tells Migi to find the wall with the water flea wallpaper. It's at this point that we find out that Dali is, in fact, the elder brother, and Migi is the younger. Although I still don't have the closest idea as to who is who. Migi enters Akiyama's sister's room and begins searching for the water flea wallpaper, but it turns out that this room wasn't the room. When he was about to leave, the sister, who we all thought was asleep, drags Migi to her bosom, and Migi is face to face with a set of beautiful melons. Well, that's not the point. Migi and Dali return home and discuss their next move. Migi mentions that they need to remain composed if they're going to find their mother's killer and bring the person to justice. A few days later, Rabbit Boy invites Hitori over. They think it's suspicious, and even I think it's suspicious. Maruta was one of the kids who came to Hitori's welcome party. This time, Migi decides he's the one who wants to pay the visit, while Dali lurks around to investigate and figures out that this house has no water flea wallpaper. Upon returning to the room to check on Migi, he discovers that Maruta was playing a game of rock, paper, scissors with Migi and made Migi play with a handicap so he could win every time. He smacked Migi whenever he won, and what was more annoying was the insults he rained on Migi and the things he said about their mother. Dali sneaks into the room, pulls Migi under the bed, and switches places with him to continue the game. Maruta then strikes a bargain that whoever loses the next round would do whatever the winner says. Dali agrees, and when they play, he pulls out scissors and wins. Before Maruta can even understand what's going on, Dali smacks his face with a slipper and beats Maruta's head like a drum. Dali definitely got slipper skills from my mother. As he was smacking his head, Migi interjects and puts a helmet on Maruta's head as if telling Dali, "You're not keeping your composure." Hitori finally leaves Maruta's home and heads back to his. Today, Hitori is introduced to the maid of the house, Mrs. Mitsuyama, who immediately tells Hitori to simply call her Michan. This woman creeps the heavens out of Hitori because she begins asking so many unnecessary questions. From the questions, we deduce that Hitori will be starting school the next day. I have got chills. I can only begin to imagine the kind of havoc these boys will cause. Hitori asks Michan if their house is the only house she helps clean, but she says no, that she cleans a couple of other houses as well. Hitori's eyes shoot open. He's clearly now interested and wants to know more, but Michan tells him she cannot talk about other people's homes. For someone who was just talking like my aunt's parrot, she definitely knows how to keep a secret. Then Hitori's dad makes a joke, saying that she can't just tell people about other people. What if she told other houses about Hitori's underpants? The mom sprinkles enough spice on the joke and mentions that Hitori's underpants are cute, striped underpants. This makes our boy storm out in shame, and he heads to his room, where he begins to complain to his brother about the ridiculous underpants. Something then happens that kills me. Migi is so annoyed by the way the woman was joking about the underpants, and he begins to imitate her. The imitation was perfect, so perfect that Dali begins to laugh like a cancer patient having a seizure. Dali then comes up with a diabolical plan and mentions to Migi that his talent could be put to good use. They plan it so when the woman is busy hanging clothes with Michan, Dali calls for her, and Migi takes her place and enters a conversation with Michan. I mean, I can totally see his shadow from this cloth. So is this lady blind? We discover that the woman is the only one Michan can talk to about certain things, and Migi tries to use that to his advantage by asking her about the patterned room they are looking for. He asks in a tricky way by showing her shorts with the same pattern he was looking for, and while Dali had the woman distracted, Michan tells Migi that a room at the Ichijo's has such a pattern. Migi is happy they've made some progress. In the night that day, while they both reminisce about their mother, They decide that they'll approach the Ichijo's son Eiji, since he also goes to school. The next morning, these boys dress like a set of robots, literally matching every move they made. I'm not going to lie. I was too excited about this because I really wanted to see how well they'll do in school. So Dali heads on the bus to Sansei Junior High School with his parents, and Migi follows after them on his bicycle. They get to school, and Hitori's mom announces that he is in class 1-5. Even when Akiyama comes to hug Hitori, telling him that they are in the same class, Hitori looks so uninterested because he's searching for Eiji. He later sees that Eiji is in class 1-1, and he asks his mom about that. She then tells him that Eiji is in the class for the gifted, and Hitori looks quite annoyed. I'm guessing because he hoped to be in the same class as Eiji. Turns out Eiji is the freshman representative, and he gives some sort of speech. Just then, Migi arrives in school. While the speech was going on, Dali kept observing his surroundings when suddenly one guy asks him out of the blue if it's true he's from the orphanage. After the speech, Migi meets up with Dali in the restroom and tells him that the only way to advance in class and meet Eiji is if they do well in tests and exams. This poses a problem because, like I told you earlier, these boys are two amazing bundles of illiteracy. They can't even properly do basic subtraction. While they were discussing, they hear some boys talk and discover that Eiji is among them. Hitori comes out and tries to talk to Eiji, but once Eiji sees that Hitori is in class 5-1, he pretends to have no idea of who he is. This makes our boys furious, and that night, they decide to do some studying and quick quizzes. But Migi kept on getting low marks, lower than Dali. Dali keeps on talking to Migi, not knowing that the idiot's mind wasn't even here. Migi then tells Dali that he saw a goddess today, and Dali tells him they don't have time for such tomfoolery. Not gonna lie, this girl is finer than a plate of jollof rice. I can totally understand why Migi would lose focus. Dali tries to tell Migi that he's losing focus, but Migi isn't having it. All he can see and envision is the girl. Dali then tells him he should try to get the girl to notice him, and the next day Migi does, and the girl introduces herself as Sally. But when Migi asks to be friends, the girl immediately tells him she can't be friends with morons, so he should come back when he is smarter. Migi dashes away, I'm guessing to go and start reading with his entire life. Suddenly, the girl pulls out the wig to reveal silky yellow hair, Dali's hair. Turns out this beautiful bundle of mischief was none other than Dali in disguise, and he explains to us that while Migi was in gym class, he went to the library but got chased away and eventually had to use a disguise. He didn't even know that Migi would fall for him, or for her. Well, anyways, he had gotten his brother to start reading, but this plan was diabolical at its core. The next day, Migi comes to show Sally proof that he is smart, but Sally recognizes those papers as Dali's own papers and laughs within himself. Then he tells Migi to come so they study together, and Migi agrees with speed, the way he studies in her presence. This is the ultimate reason why you should fear women. After a short while, Migi then confesses to Sally, or rather Dali, that he loves her, and then proceeds to ask Sally if she likes him. This is a very tricky question for Dali, which seemed like there were no right answers, so he tells her that she could love him if he gets 100 on both English and Japanese. And now the day of midterms has arrived. Dali looks calm and collected as normal. Meanwhile, Migi looks like he just survived World War II. They both go to endure their examinations, and after the exams, Dali checks his results and sees he got 97, 98, all high marks. He says he'll praise Migi even if he gets anything above 70. Migi walks into the room, and when he swings open his result, lo and behold, this boy aced all his papers. Literal 100% on all scores. This is a solid reminder that you should take 5 hours out of your day to fear women and add an extra 3 hours to fear those who don't fear women. Obviously, Sally made a promise to Migi, so to repay him, she asks that they go on a date. Honestly, Migi was having the time of his life until Dali realizes he can't keep on fooling his brother. Sally tells Migi that she'll be moving far away. This makes Migi unhappy, but he doesn't show it. It's when he gets home that I realize that the little heart of this boy has been shattered into pieces. He cries so bitterly, and Dali comes to give him a hug. The result sheet comes out the next day, and Eiji tops as the first from class 1-1. And guess who came first from class 5? 1. I don't even need to say it. The Ichijo family invites Hitori and his family for dinner that night to celebrate, Hitori being the number 1 in his class. Migi and Dali make a plan to use this opportunity to search the whole house, but little do they know that Eiji has plans of his own. The dinner starts like every other dinner, with Migi at the dining table and Dali searching the rooms for the flea wallpaper. Dali mentions that these guys seem to be innocent, but he feels like there's something going on he doesn't know about. Things take a drastic turn when Eiji brings out a uniform that has Migi and Dali's mother's keepsake. Eiji accuses Hitori of stealing it, and funny enough, Migi is wearing the necklace at that point. Eiji asks Migi to take off his clothes, and Migi doesn't know what to do because if he takes it off, then Eiji will get more suspicious. Migi signals to Dali, who sneaks under the table and uses cutlery from the table to take off the necklace right before Eiji pulls off Migi's shirt. But wait. So you mean to tell me that no one noticed this? Please drop your eye doctor's number in the comment section because everyone in the Migi and Dali universe is officially blind. Migi tries to make a joke about the fact that the necklace isn't his, and would Eiji like to search his trousers? Eiji destroys my brain when he pulls down Migi's trousers to reveal the striped underpants. This was the height of it. He then starts searching for the keepsake by touching around Migi's buttocks. Way to go, Eiji. Now I don't like you anymore. Eiji doesn't find anything and decides to call in their dog. This throws Dali into a world of panic because he realizes that if they look under the table, they would find out that there are 2 Hitoris. He's about to throw the necklace far away when the dog creeps under the table. This dog is crazy. He doesn't bark, he doesn't even flinch. More like he's silently telling Dali, I got you, so what you gonna do now? Just when everyone is about to look under the table, Migi confesses to taking the necklace and signals to Dali to give it to him. He then tells everyone that he took the necklace when he went into the restroom, and his parents are beyond shocked. Eiji's mom then makes an extremely absurd suggestion. She tells Hitori's parents that for the orphanage, not to find out that they're not training this child well, they would keep him until he has steered back in the right direction. That day, Hitori's parents left without Hitori, and I'm sure their hearts must have been shattered. Later that day, we see Eiji go into something like a secret room, and then we see almost naked Migi being interrogated as to where he found the button Eiji was searching for 8 years ago. Migi tells him he found it on the bathroom floor, but Eiji is not buying any of that. He plans to torture Migi till he speaks. Meanwhile, Dali on the other side of the door plans to get it and rescue his brother, but that beast protecting the door is something else. Dali tries to corner the beast to one side and bolt in, but the dog is obviously smarter than this idiot. Dali thinks the dog is about to bite him, but the dog stops abruptly, and he discovers that maybe the dog just needed someone to play with. Dali tells the dog that after he rescues his brother, he'll come and play with him, and somehow the dog lets him pass. He gets into the room, and he and Migi begin to discuss, and while they were discussing, Dali discovers that this room, which they are keeping Migi now, might be the room with the water flea wallpaper. He asks Migi to check, and Migi checks only to find the inscriptions and drawings they and their mum made all those years, and he begins to cry. His tears are so loud that they attract Eiji's mother, who comes and shoves a bottle of milk down Migi's throat. I've seen twisted families in my life, but this one just seems to be off the charts. We see Dali trying to pick the lock to Eiji's father's study. He mentions that these guys are good at keeping secrets, and he hasn't even found one thing. Suddenly, someone closes his eyes from behind, and Dali becomes so afraid because nobody's supposed to be in the house today. He finds out that it is Michan, and she's also a housekeeper for this house. Together, they begin to search the house and start finding little clues here and there pointing to Migi and Dali's mother's presence in that house. They climb the stairs and enter this weird room, and Michan notices that there's a portrait that seems to be unusually clean. Dali thinks it's suspicious and comes and twists the portrait, and it takes them to a secret room that reveals something unimaginable. They find a diorama of the whole Oregon village, including all the people living in it, and they also find data on every single person living in this village. Just as they were still taking in this site, they hear movement, and Michan immediately hides Dali and tells him not to come out until it's safe. Things have definitely begun to get heated. The next day, Dali can't find Michan anywhere, and he rushes to tell Migi that it's dangerous to still be in that house. He tells Migi they should run home and rethink the strategy, but Migi has other plans. This family has been treating him like a toddler with all the milk in the bottle and all the toys, and Migi plans to be the perfect toddler so that Eiji's mum can lower her guard and tell him more about this house. But for now, she's not totally into it. I don't know if this woman has a fetish or she's just plain mad, because what in heaven's name was she even doing? Making Migi dress like a toddler and giving him milk and all. I mean, she's not even being true to her role, because she should also give him milk directly from the source, if you get what I mean. Dali, who was in the study, hears a weird noise and rushes down only to peep through a hole and see his brother acting like a complete toddler. He laughs, and I mean I would laugh too. Migi seems to notice him but still doesn't break character because he needs to win this woman's heart if he wants to get her to open up to him. I would only say this once, this boy's shame has reduced to -62. Hitori was having dinner with the family, and he's in the character of a 5-year-old. He and Dali were doing an experiment where Migi would ask them a series of questions, and Dali will check their reaction to see if they're lying or not. Migi asks a few questions but gets back no reaction from them, and then he asks if Eiji usually bedwets, and Eiji says no, with no reaction at all. He then asks the sister and the mother, who also say he doesn't, with no reaction at all. Or maybe that's what we thought, because as soon as the camera goes under the table, we can see the family having an earthquake of reactions. Later that night, Eiji's mum tells Hitori that he would be able to return to his home the next day, saying she had already informed his parents. This made Migi and Dali so angry because they were just beginning to figure out what was going on with this family. They realized they still don't know who the actual killer is, and they have no way of finding out yet. So they decide to take drastic measures and go to the man's study in the middle of the night to scare him with a disguise of Migi, making him think that it was their mum. I am not gonna lie, but these boys have faces that can resemble anybody, or is it just that everybody looks like everybody in this anime? The man looks afraid at first, and then comes to hug the woman, calling her Metri, and the boys realize he is innocent and flee the room. This is the first ever time they are hearing their mother's name, Metri. They begin to think that maybe, just maybe, their mother was this man's mistress. They decide to go after the woman this time around. Immediately, the woman sees Metri. She releases a piercing scream and bolts away to grab a sharp scissors. This makes Migi and Dali run away in fear and hide under the table, and they also come to the conclusion that the woman might also be innocent, because there is no way you would hunt a ghost with a pair of scissors. They hide, and the woman would have actually stabbed them if the man had not interfered. They try to bolt, but the woman sees them through the reflection on the scissors and throws the scissors, which is inches away from Migi's butt and Dali's head. Just then, they head back into the room where the dog is, and when Migi, who is disguised as Maitri, wants to go back into the room, Eiji shows up, and once he sees Maitri, he shrieks, saying, "It's a ghost," and he runs away. This was all Migi, and Dali needed to find out who the killer was, and the next day they went back to their home. At the dining, Migi realizes that Dali must not be feeling well because of all the days he spent in that house without proper feeding, and he makes a switch so that the man and woman can take care of him. Since they now know that it was Eiji who killed their mother, the two devise plans to interrogate him. But Dali tells Migi to leave the interrogation to him, and Dali switches back to the girl who broke Migi's heart, Sally. In school, during lunch break, the students at Eiji's table ask him what his ideal type of girl is, but Eiji simply tells them that he has no time for women. Then he goes to the toilet and barfs up every single food he just ate because he's so uncomfortable with the ghost he saw the other night. As he's vomiting, Sally catches him and messes with him, and he tells her to keep it a secret, but she bolts off, and he chases her. He almost catches her at the stairs, but she evades him, dropping a pendant that was given to her by Migi in the process. Eiji tries to bribe her, but she wants none of that cash. She tells him the only currency she'll accept is if he tells her more information about himself, and they come outside where he shows her a bit of his pictures when he was 5 years old. Sally requests for more, and he gives her more. She walks away and tells him this isn't enough, and it seems Eiji got hit with a love potion because he simply could not take his mind off this girl, to the extent that he started searching for her everywhere, but nobody seems to recognize her. Hitori is in the library with Akiyama when a girl comes to tell him that his class will be starting soon, and weirdly enough, Akiyama backs him. I don't know if this guy is still living the life of a 5-year-old, but Akiyama backs him like a baby. Then when they get to the stairs, he sees the fish pendant he gave to Sally and instantly becomes excited. When he gets home that night, he tells Dali what he saw, and Dali realizes he must have been too careless to allow something like this to happen. He tries to tell Migi that Sally isn't back, but Migi isn't having any of it because the next day he draws a portrait of Sally to post on the walls of the school as a missing person. But my God, Migi is extremely horrible at drawing. I mean, is that a girl or an abomination of a picture? Akiyama realizes that Migi was trying to draw something, but he is so horrible at it, and Akiyama helps him to draw a way better picture, and happily Migi puts up the pictures around, and one girl sees it and mentions that Sally fits the description of the girl Eiji was looking for. This makes Migi curious, and he starts following Eiji. Sally was waiting for Eiji in a room, and when Eiji comes and they begin to discuss, Migi barges in, and once he sees Sally, he begins to drag her out, telling her that Eiji is a dangerous person. Eiji puts out his own hand too and drags Sally, and now Sally is in the middle. Dali doesn't know what to do, and so he, as Sally, pushes away Migi's hand and tells Migi that her and Eiji are dating. This was beyond crazy. Nobody should blame Migi if he ever becomes a playboy because his heart has been broken one too many times by the same female. The next Saturday, Sally visits Eiji at his house. Meanwhile, Migi is having a total breakdown at home at the loss of his baby girl. His mom is so sad seeing him cry like this that she pulls out a bottle of wine, and the three of them indulge in the act of forgetting Sally. This brings memories of my first heartbreak. Unlike Hitori, I couldn't tell my parents. My mom would be the first person to slap me back to reality. Oh well. Back at Eiji's house, Dali plans to get information out of Eiji using regressive hypnosis, a technique he has practiced on Migi many times. So after a few minutes of studying, Sally tells Eiji that she wants to take a nap. In fact, she says they should take a nap together. Eiji refuses, and instead says she should sleep while he keeps track of time. She tells him she can't sleep alone, and this stupid boy brings out toys and places them beside Sally. Who the hell could sleep in such conditions? Sally then pulls out the big guns, literally. She pulls out this massive bra she must have stolen from Hitori's mum. Eiji immediately freezes up. It's kinda cute though. He quickly covers her up and says, "It's decent. Such a wonderful child of God." He tells Sally that they can't do something like this if they haven't entered into an agreement as lovers. He says they need to bust first, and Sally agrees without even thinking about it. My head disintegrates when I and Sally find out that the bus means a kiss, and somehow, after a little bit of hesitation, Sally kisses Eiji, and after a few more moments, he falls asleep. Sally then begins to do the hypnosis on him, and it's working when suddenly Migi shows up at the window begging Sally to take him back, and that's when Eiji wakes up. He walks to the window, and before you can say bubblegum, he pushes Migi down from the window. Everything seems lost, but Dali catches his brother and shouts at him in his own voice. This makes Migi realize instantly who Sally actually is, and the hurt on his face triples. He bites Migi and then falls off, but lands safely, and he runs away. And that's when Eiji confesses that that was the same way he pushed a blonde woman down from his window 8 years ago, thinking she was a ghost. With this new information, Dali bolts to meet his brother to tell him what he now knows, but I fear a huge rift might have appeared between the twins due to the imaginary woman. They say, never let a woman come between you and your friend. But what do you do when it's an imaginary woman? I can't wait to see what happens next. We see Akiyama's goddess of a sister. Oh God, to feel that body. She sees him taking food into his room and questions why he's been eating in his room all this while, and my God, look at those peaches. Akiyama goes into his room, and I'm surprised to see Migi. He calls out to him, places the food in front of him, and Migi pulls off this very slippery move, eating with his mouth. Then we see Dali, all alone. Akiyama asks Hitori why he won't let him call his parents, and wonders if maybe his parents abused him, causing him to run away from home. He mentions that he is going to help Hitori no matter what, because Hitori helped him somehow. Suddenly, Akiyama's sister calls out to him, saying that his friend is waiting for him at the door. What friend could this be, Akiyama wonders as he steps to open the door. Bro almost passed out upon seeing Hitori, and he asks him how he got outside. Hitori, who is actually Dali, tells an obvious lie that he crawled out of the window. Akiyama believes the ridiculous lie wholeheartedly, lets him in, and Dali requests tea. Akiyama goes to prepare it, and Dali enters his room, trying to get Migi to come outside and go home with him. Eiji comes back, gives Dali the tea. None of my business, but who the hell drinks tea with a straw? Eiji mentions that he has problems with schoolwork, and Hitori offers to help him. Just then, Migi makes a little movement in the closet, and Akiyama was about to check what made that noise. Dali gives Akiyama a very unclean slap, dirtier than a trash can, to the extent that the guy's glasses flew away. Hitori then apologizes and talks about wanting revenge. He said it out loud so that Migi would hear him and maybe change his mind and come back with him, but instead, Akiyama convinces Migi in a weird way that he didn't need revenge. Migi ponders on this and makes the decision to switch places with Dali. He drags Dali into the closet and rides into the sunset with Akiyama. He says that he doesn't need anyone to tell him what to do, thus the twins broke up. Dali also mentions that he didn't need Migi to exact the revenge he wanted, and in pain, he heads home. He's welcomed by his parents, who tell Hitori he'll be participating in the Halloween costume contest held in the village, and they give him a very, very, very ridiculous costume. The costume was a vampire mosquito. At first, Dali seems uninterested, but then his attention is drawn to this when he discovers that Eiji will be participating as well. He makes a diabolical plan to disgrace Eiji, and, if possible, even finish him. He mentions to himself that he doesn't need Migi anymore and starts acting the way they both would normally act, but fails woefully. First, he tries to eat for two, but my God, does he throw up? Then he tries to make a pie, but instead of a pie, he makes an abomination. He even tries to massage his father's shoulder, but he messes up even more. Don't know if this was a massage or attempted murder. His adopted father abruptly asks him to stop because what the hell was that? And then the man asks that they take a bath together. During the bath, he realizes that he might actually be able to pull this off without Migi. The day of the costume show arrived, and Dali is looking even more ridiculous than ever. At the event, everyone shows their costumes, and then it gets to Hitori's turn. He goes there, sips on hot sauce or just tomato, spills blood on everybody, and they begin to boo at him. Such stupidity, and I thought Dali was the smart one. He loses immediately. Then we find out it was actually in his diabolical plan. He needed to let Ichijo win because he already set a trap for him, but Ichijo climbed the stage and was looking like a weirdo from Hogwarts. I mean, all he needed was Harry Potter glasses, and this guy was sold as a baby magician. Dali senses that things won't go as planned because Ichijo wasn't even in the mood to play dress-up, decided to plant the idea that he was a beggar who sold his instruments to take care of his sister. I have honestly come to the conclusion that everybody in this town smokes marijuana because they all fell for the story and then voted for Ichijo to win. Like, dude has 90% of the votes. Maybe even Hitori's parents voted for him. It's at this point that we realize the kind of plan Hitori has. He actually plans to destroy the boy, literally kill him, but Eiji shocks everyone when he declines the win and says he has no right to be the winner. This is insane, stupid, and scary at the same time. So who was going to win? Suddenly, they can the second runner-up, and when we lift up our eyes, we see that the person in the costume is none other than Migi. Jesus freaking Christ. Dali jumps down from the tree afraid that he might actually harm his own brother. This was scary. Migi walks towards the throne made for the winner. In fact, he sits on it, and the trap is activated, and it starts falling on him. This was beyond sad, but suddenly Eiji pops up like a popsicle and ultimately saves Migi, hurting himself in the process. Mad stuff. Really mad stuff. Dali was so scared his brother would die, but luckily Eiji took the fall. But the annoying part was that Eiji didn't die, okay? Maybe it's not like I wanted him to die, but I mean he was the cause of all these problems, or maybe that's what I thought. Migi is discussing with Akiyama and is disturbed by the fact that Eiji saved him. So he sneaks back into the house and sees that Dali isn't feeling well. In fact, Dali calls out his name in his sleep. Migi doesn't really bother because he has his own sinister plan, which he needs to achieve. He goes to the basement and dresses up like Sally and heads to Eiji's house. I'm sure he just wanted to find out for himself why Eiji saved him. He rings the doorbell, and Eiji's witch of a mother opens up the door and tells him she can't meet Eiji. Sally was about giving up when Eiji pops up and tells her to come on in. Like an actual Balkan mother, Eiji's mom stays outside the door to Eiji's room just in case. You know what was about to go down, but these guys had bigger problems than banging, and let's not forget that they were both boys. No, 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 no. I am definitely not ready to ruin my innocence by watching such. Sally asks Akiyama why in heaven's name he would save the boy they called Hitori, and Akiyama scatters my brain when he says, "It was to atone." Atone for what? You flipping murderer. It's crazy, actually. But this single statement gives me and Migi second thoughts. Maybe this handsome, evil human boy wasn't as bad as we thought. Nah, scratch that. I still wanted to kill him. Dude annoyed the hell out of me. Suddenly, Eiji called out to his mom and told her that she should go and buy sourdough bread from a shop called Descartes. See? I don't know what the problem is with these people, but bread is bread where I come from. Which one is sourdough bread? Anyways, it works, and the mom finally leaves to buy the bread, knowing fully well that these two people are not going to bang. I remember when I was growing up, my mom would literally sneak in a video camera into my room. Crazy, but true. She leaves and hurries to buy the bread, and Eiji tells her he wants to show her something. He first of all tells her he pushed someone down from his windows when he was younger, but you and I and Migi already know that. Like, that is the single reason why this all started. I mean, this enemy wouldn't even be an enemy if Migi and Dali's mom didn't die. Eiji takes her to that room that Dali found that time. The surveillance room where they watched every single person in the Oregon. Eiji mentions that this room was where his mom used to surveil every single person in the village. Okay, this anime might have been set in the Dark Ages or whatever, but I mean, didn't they have video cameras? This shit looks ridiculous as shit. Migi's brains are dissected and redirected when he sees all this. He mentions that it was Dali that actually witnessed this the last time. So it's no surprise that he was surprised. Eiji then mentions to Migi that he was wondering where the doll of that woman he pushed down must be. Eiji tells us that his mom told him that he only saw a ghost, but you know, as humans, we would figure out the truth one day. Eiji then tells Sally that his mom had become suspicious of the fact that someone tried to kill and thought that person knew his secret. He surprised the life out of me when he mentioned that his mother would be targeting the Sonoyama family. Definitely not what I was expecting, but this drama is becoming even more intense. Eiji tells Sally to make sure she tells Hitori about this, telling him to flee the village. Then, just like a witch with mad teleporting abilities, this mad woman of a mother walks into her room and scared the balls away from me. Like, I literally had to chase my own balls for 30 seconds before it came back. Migi is scared. Rather, Sally is scared. And Eiji is scared too. And let's not even leave out the fact that the almighty Recap Weebs is scared as well. What she does next makes me laugh, even though I was more scared than a 4-year-old version of me who just saw the curtain dance in an unusual way thinking it was a ghost. The witch pulls out a breed. No jokes. She pulls out a rock-solid bundle of flour aiming to use it to kill Sally. Eiji grabs onto his mama, and Sally runs off. The wig gets caught by her. Shit! This was intense. She discovered his true identity. Migi runs a bit but falls in the process. Again, shit. Ultimately, he finds himself in Karen's room. He tries to feign her voice, but the mother doesn't let up. Karen eventually saves him and tells Hitori that that woman isn't her mother. Then we see the mother breaking Usain Bolt's record for 200 the meters dash as she runs to Hitori's house. The way she runs is hilarious and scary at the same time. She goes to Hitori's house, drugs Hitori's parents, and captures Hitori, or rather Dali. Meanwhile, Karen has already told Eiji to go home. And once he goes home, he noticed his parents sleeping, and things are extremely weird, but he entered his room and sees that Dali has been captured. Just how strong is this evil witch? Although she is surprised that there are 2 Hitoris, she still keeps her cool. She promises to kill one and spare one, and Dali sacrifices himself against Migi's wishes. Suddenly, the housekeeper shows up and tries to save them. She actually does, but she gets killed in the process. The boys flee to a certain graveyard, and there they stay for a few days. This was really sad. I didn't want that housekeeper to die, but the skills of Eiji's mom were just too good. It was really sad when Eiji's mom finally killed the woman. The boys fled to a graveyard, and after a few days of fighting between them, they realized they needed to go back. They went back and formed a team. Them, Akiyama, and that stupid boy with insane rabbit teeth. They first of all tried to rescue Karen, and it seemed impossible, but eventually they all made a plan so that they could get Karen out of the house. This was really difficult because Eiji's mom had already reported them for killing that housemaid, and there was no way they could get into the building undetected, so they decided to team up with Akiyama and Rabbit Teeth, and together they devised a plan to get into Eiji's house so they could free Karen. At this point, They had realized that Eiji was not totally at fault, so this became a very delicate issue. The craziest part of this was when they revealed to both of them that they were twins and not one person, like the two Hitoris were one person. These guys felt like they just drank 6 crates of tequila. They made a plan. Maruta, Akiyama, and the two Hitoris. They planned to use Karen as a hostage, but she told them that her mom wouldn't care about her. She would only care about Eiji, but she already locked him up in that room she locked Migi in. Their plan was amazing. Maruta was going to be the cameraman, and Migi and Dali were going to execute the plan. Apart from the fact that Maruta was acting like a wimp, they made a rope and threw it into Karen's room, and the ever-bumbling idiot Maruta got scared in the middle of the rope movement, and he almost causes Dali to fall, but Migi saves him. We're back to them in the house. Phew, it's crazy, but honestly, I don't think these guys' plan is even going to work, but still, let's find out. Karen feigns a stomach pain, and that draws the attention of her father. Migi and Dali and Maruta deuce the opportunity to go to find Eiji. They find Eiji acting like a baby the way Migi was acting like it, and when they see him, he begins to cry. Migi tries to make him laugh, though Dali still can't get over the fact that he was the one who killed their mom. Damn. This was hard, but Dali eventually comes around, and while they were carrying him, Dali manages to make a silly face that makes Eiji laugh. I have no idea if this was juju or voodoo, but Eiji was totally acting like a child, and it was disturbing. Suddenly, they see Maruta has been ambushed by that dog. And suddenly, Eiji's mom comes out and runs towards them. This was scary as hell, but Maruta sticks to the plan, and they use Eiji as a hostage to get her to confess all she had done. The rate at which things have gotten intense in this anime is beyond crazy. I think now we are going to unfold the backstory to this whole big problem. We hear a story being told. A young lady named Reiko is introduced. We find out Reiko is actually Eiji's mom, and she tells them that her only dream was to have a happy family. She got a beautiful house and married a doctor. Her life was perfect. Yes, it was, until the day they brought in the maid. And yes, you can guess who the maid was. Migi and Dali's mom. Their mom, as we can see now, is also as big a bumbling idiot as her 2 sons, especially with the way she almost gets sucked in by this vacuum cleaner. And it almost swallows her. She's saved by Reiko, who actually doesn't seem to hate her at this point because she helps with her hair. And my god, Metri is beyond beautiful. Now I see why Migi and Dali look like mannequins, and she's as funky as them too. Metri mentions that she looks up to Reiko. Reiko teaches Metri everything she needs to know. From baking to sewing to ironing, Reiko was like an older sister to Metri. For a fact, they were fond of each other. Things took a drastic turn the day Reiko found out she may never be able to conceive naturally. Her face changed totally. Reiko could not believe her ears when the doctor told her this. She just couldn't even imagine it. It's actually very painful, to be honest. Then the psycho button in Reiko got pushed aggressively. She makes Mitri make love to her husband, saying if she gives birth to her child, the family will be complete. She tells Mitri to pretend to be her, and Mitri wasn't okay with this. Mitri wasn't okay with this at all, but what could she do? It was as if Reiko developed a fetish for watching her husband sleep with Mitri. Anytime they were about to do it, Reiko would hide somewhere and watch with her eyes wide open. It seemed the foolish man had finally knocked her up because now we see Metri vomiting. The number 1 sign of pregnancy, and guess what happened? The stupid man rushes to hug Metri and says, "So she's the one. So I'm actually sensible." He felt the difference in her female organs. Let's not talk much about this. Metri tries to push him away, but Reiko is watching. The man then tells Metri that he doesn't want the perfect wife. He wants Reiko, and that was it. The beginning of the extreme jealousy. Metri was confined to her room. She gave birth to 2 golden-haired boys, and then it is mentioned that after that, Reiko was released from the curse, but for real. Was there even any curse to begin with? Reiko was just an insane, wicked, mad, confused woman who allowed her husband to cheat easily because her ovaries weren't working properly anymore. Afterward, Reiko climbed to the balcony in an incredible way. I had no idea this witch had ties with Spider-Man. She reaches Rabbit Teeth and seizes his camera and throws it away. Now, the billion-dollar question. You were videoing her, for God's sake. How did you not see her coming? How did you not see someone you had the camera on coming? I have come to the solid conclusion that every single person in the anime has a mental problem. From Migi to the Sonoyamas. In fact, everyone. She comes and tries to attack the kids. They defend themselves and even hold a knife to Eiji's throat. threatening to kill him if she comes closer. She snatches the knife, cutting herself in the process, but this woman doesn't even care at all. She just wants to have Eiji and to kill Migi and Dali. This interesting story begins to unfold even more, and I swear to you and any god you worship, the next twist blew my brains into bits. Reiko unveils to us that Metri didn't give birth to twins. Metri actually gave birth to triplets, 2 with golden hair and 1 with black hair. Wait, what the heavenly hell? She tells us even more that that child is Eiji, and she picked him because he looked like her. This woman is more twisted than a bundle of intertwined twine. She reaches out for Eiji, who looks like he's also reaching out to her, but once she mouths the words, "Come back home," Eiji pushes the ugly witch and she falls to the floor, the same way he pushed Migi and Dali's mother. Scratch that. His own mother. We then see the part of this story where Reiko took Eiji from Metri and left her in that room. The same room they used to interrogate Migi that time. It wasn't easy for Metri, being without one of her sons and managing to raise the others in that room. Every time Reiko would bring them food, Metri would ask if her son was doing well. It was a really difficult time for her. It would seem like they spent a lot of years in that room because the day the boys finally were able to break free, they had grown quite a bit. As soon as the door got opened, Metri fled with her 2 beautiful boys. This story was too much for Migi and Dali to comprehend. After all, they were very stupid illiterates. So wait, this show should have been called Migi, Dali, and Eiji. Okay, that wouldn't work. Migi and Dali don't believe it. They say they have different hair colors so they can't be triplets. They can't even be siblings. This show is actually darker than it may seem. Eiji then asks them about their mother, and they tell him she's dead. But isn't he supposed to know that considering he was the one who killed their mom? Seems Eiji is as broken as my first ever toy, but this was insane. Dali shouts at him, telling him he's not their brother, and Eiji goes down the stairs to pick his mom and try to tend to her wounds. Just then, Eiji's dad shows up after Karen couldn't hold him back again, and upon seeing the Sonoyama twins, he became confused, and so she was going to call the Sonoyamas. They tell him not to, and are about explaining everything to him when suddenly they hear a mighty shout from Reiko. They rush to the room and see her lying lifeless with blood on her body. They think Eiji killed her, but Karen senses something is amiss. She tries to poke Reiko's eyes and the woman shoots back alive. A true witch she is. She screams out of the room, locking the door behind her, and she begins to say her goodbyes to everyone. She says she'll move with Eiji to where they can have a more perfect life and start everything over from the beginning. This show is bonkers, but what does she plan to do with everyone in the room? Her husband, the twins, Karen, and Maruta. Is she going to kill them? Is she going to set the house on fire? This has to be the most dramatic show I have ever watched. Will she just leave like that? What are your thoughts? Thanks for watching, fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this recap, dive into the next video or playlist. And don't forget to check out our cool anime hoodies in the description below. See you in the next recap.